What is relationship OCD? More importantly, do you have it? And if you do, how can you tell? And what should you do about it if you do have it? Relationship OCD is one of those kind of hot topics out there right now. And if you have anxiety about your relationship, you've probably come across it, probably are worried that it's something you have, or maybe you'd be relieved if you had it because then at least you know what the problem is, right? That's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to discuss what it is, how to tell if you've got it, and we're going to explore whether or not it's really useful to know if you have it or not as well. But first, guys, I am Rachael Sloan. I help anxious people save their marriages by overcoming their intrusive thoughts, the ones that drive you crazy and make you anxious, in just 30 days. That is what I do, but today I'm here to talk to you about relationship OCD. So let's start out by defining it. What is it? Because everyone gets anxious in their relationships, right, to some extent. But relationship OCD, relationship obsessive compulsive disorder, is more than that. As you might imagine, it is characterized by obsessive thoughts about your relationship. And it's also characterized by a tendency to sabotage the very relationship that you're anxious about. And this is a diagnosable disorder. That means it's not just some fancy phrase that somebody made up and you have it or you don't. Like, you can be diagnosed with ROCD. It is much like obsessive compulsive disorder. It's a condition you can have and be diagnosed with. So do you have it? Where is this line between like normal anxiety in a relationship, doubt, the worried thoughts, the fear that your partner might cheat or leave you or fall in love with somebody else? How much of that is normal? And how much of it isn't? Where is this like diagnosable disorder? Guys, you might be disappointed by this, but I think it's really, really important. In my opinion, defining that line, what is normal, what is this ROCD disorder, is not a helpful question. Let me explain that. I don't think you need to know if you have ROCD or not, except in very few circumstances. Most of you don't need to be asking yourself this question or obsessing about it, right? Because here's the thing. If your anxiety, if your intrusive or obsessive thoughts about your relationship are affecting your life, if they are making you unhappy, uncomfortable, miserable, if you don't like the way you are acting in response to your anxiety and those thoughts, well, then that's not a useful question for you to be asking, right? You need to do something about it. So I see a couple people coming on now. Hi guys, give me a wave if as you're joining. But guys, what I'm talking about here is relationship OCD and how to tell if you have it. And what I was just saying is that it's really not the most useful question to ask yourself. Some people should find out, right? It is a diagnosable disorder. But for most of us, if you find that your anxiety, that your intrusive thoughts are getting in the way of your relationship or of your life in general, then that means you should do something about them, right? Then it's time to take action to relieve that anxiety, to change those thoughts. It doesn't really matter if you actually have this diagnosable condition or not. You have thoughts that are getting in the way of your life. So it's time to do something. Because if you start doing all this research and worrying about like what exactly are all of the symptoms of relationship OCD and do I have it, what do you end up doing? You end up obsessing about whether or not you have an obsessive disorder, right? You end up getting so caught up in do I have this, that starts to interfere with your life and interfere with your relationship. And it also doesn't help your anxiety. Worrying over whether or not you have this condition is going to make your anxiety skyrocket when you already have it. So, in my opinion, the only time it is really useful to know for certain if you have relationship OCD or not is if you are going to be treated by a psychologist or a psychiatrist and your insurance is going to pay for it. Because then having that diagnosis can help you pay for treatment. Other than that, guys, I don't think it's ever really helpful to ask yourself whether or not you have relationship OCD. Let's focus on what really matters, which is you, your relationship, and ultimately your happiness, right? If anxious or obsessive parts of you, anxious or obsessive thoughts are getting in the way of those things, let's do something about them. And this is where I think we actually have something to learn from relationship OCD, because there's been a lot of research on this, And people have compiled a lot of the common obsessions, the common fears, and the common worries. Now remember, I'm sharing these with you not to help you decide if you have relationship OCD or not, but because even people who don't, even people who just have normal anxiety in their relationship, often share some of these common obsessions, these common fears, these common sources of anxiety in a relationship. So it can be useful to look at the common obsessions from our OCD and see if any of them are ones that come up as like, oh, flag for you. Oh, that's something I struggle with, right? This can be helpful for you to learn about your own anxious thoughts, your own obsessive thoughts. It's not about diagnosing yourself with this condition. Okay, so here are some of the common obsessions with ROCD. The first is that you're not good enough for your partner. The second is second guessing whether or not you really love your partner, right? So the first is like, oh, I'm not good enough for them, but then do I really even like them or love them that much? And that leads into this fear of wondering if you're with the right person, right? Is this my soulmate? Is he the one? Is she the one, right? We have this kind of perfect ideal of what love and marriage is supposed to look like. And so those are things that really come up as common obsessions, as common fears, as common intrusive thoughts. Am I good enough for my partner? Often that one comes more like you're not good enough for your partner, right? It's like your own voice in your head telling you before you even start that you're not. And then there's the, well, do I really even like this guy? You can have these two at the same time, as weird as that seems. You can worry you're not good enough for your partner and worry that maybe you don't really love your partner. You can hold both of those beliefs at the same time and really make yourself anxious. And so when these fears, when these anxieties are active in you, there's certain behaviors that flow from that, which makes sense, right? Because we have these thoughts, I'm not good enough for him. What if he's not the one? What if she's not the person I'm meant to be with, right? We have that thought. It leads to an emotion, usually anxiety, right? That's what all of us are struggling with here. So there's a thought, leads to the emotion of anxiety. That emotion drives us to take certain actions, to take certain behaviors. And so it follows very logically that there's some really common behaviors that come out of these fears, out of these anxious obsessions. So one of them is obsessive questioning of your partner. That's like where you're just drilling them. Where have you been? Where are you going? Who are you talking to? Who just texted you, right? And this can be like even about their work and their coworkers, right? This is like you questioning all of the small details about your partner and what they're doing. But obsessive questioning can also take the form of you personally questioning every detail of the relationship. Like, what does it mean that he did or didn't bring me flowers? That tone of voice she used, what does that mean? Oh, you can be questioning all the little tiny details of the relationship. Oh, he chose to wear that outfit to work today. Why would he do that? What does that mean? Or he looked at me in a certain way. He knows I'm not good enough for him. Right? All these little thoughts, you can like micromanage every little detail of the relationship. That's a really common behavior that flows from these anxious fears. Another one is to be researching. And this is great. In the days of the internet, we have so much content and information at our fingertips all the time. So you can obsessively research what a perfect relationship looks like. And this one, guys, I would caution you to be really careful, because you might be like, well, I'm not out there Googling, what is a perfect relationship or what is a soulmate? You might be. A lot of people are. This can also take the form of like obsessively watching kind of these idealized movies. Chick flicks are great at this. Fairy tales even, sometimes kids movies. Like anywhere where there's this like fantasy romance and there's like the Prince Charming or the saves the day or like it all works out perfectly. Like, these kinds of finding the one stories are so ubiquitous in our movies, in our books, in our romance novels, in our kids' fairy tales. Like, you can find yourself kind of obsessively exposing yourself to that kind of material as well. It's not necessarily just Googling like how to find your soulmate. And the last behavior that really flows from these compulsive fears, these obsessions, and these anxieties is comparisons. Comparing yourself and your relationship to everybody else. So this can take a couple of forms. If you're having the thought, if the thought spurring your anxiety is something along the lines of, I'm not good enough for my partner, you may find yourself comparing you to all the other women you know, comparing you to how successful all the men around you are, right? You might be finding all of these ways, all of this proof to support this thought, this fear that you're not good enough. Because brains, you guys, are so good at finding proof to support their beliefs, but unfortunately that means they're also really good at finding proof to support their fears. So when you have this fear, oh my gosh, I'm not good enough, right? It's partly fear and it's partly belief. Like, you already kind of believe you're not good enough. Your brain goes out and finds all this evidence, usually in the form of comparisons, finding all this evidence that other people are better than you, and so of course your partner would want to be with them instead. This can also take the form of comparing your relationship as a whole to other people's relationships. And social media is so awful for this. I know I'm saying this on Facebook right now, but on social media, we don't generally post the darkest, worst, painful, hard moments of our marriages, right? We post the happy pictures. We post the smiling pictures. We post when our hair is done and our makeup is nice and our husband looks happy, right? We show our best life on social media. Sometimes we even show a completely false life on social media. But what that means is that out there, out in the world for everyone to see, is all of this like beautiful, perfect kind of fantasy life that's not real. But when you have these obsessive thoughts and these anxieties about your relationship, and then you see all these examples of like perfect relationships and happy marriages, it leads you to do this comparison, and you start comparing your relationship to all of these others. And you compare them not only to the real relationships that you see among your friends on social media or in person, you also compare them back to those fantasy relationships that you might have been kind of obsessively watching. So comparing yourself or your relationships to others, researching or binging about what is the perfect marriage, the perfect relationship, and obsessively questioning the details of your relationship and the things your partner does or says or you do or say to try to like objectively find out if this is the right person, the right marriage, if you're the right one. Those are all signs that these thoughts, these anxious, obsessive thoughts, are driving you into these behaviors, right? These are all signs that some of these are a little out of control for you, and that maybe you want to take some action, right, to start feeling better, to start dealing with that anxiety. And one way to start doing that, I say action, guys, but I want you to know, I don't mean you should actually go out and change your behavior. This is something I talk about a lot, but it doesn't work to just say, okay, well, I'm going to stop watching chick flicks, and I am going to stop comparing our relationship to other people. You can try. It's going to be hard. You're going to struggle. You're probably going to fail. And the reason for that is that it never works to just act your way out of your anxiety or out of any uncomfortable emotion. If you want to change that behavior, if you want to stop comparing, stop obsessively watching chick flicks, stop questioning every detail of your relationship, you have to go to the source of the problem. And the source of the problem isn't that you like watching chick flicks. The source of the problem is that you have that anxious thought in the first place. It's the thought, I'm not good enough. What if he's not the one? Our relationship isn't perfect. What if I don't really love her? What if I really want to be with somebody else? It's that thought, whatever that thought is for you, that thought is causing the anxiety and is leading to all these behaviors. So when I say you need to take action, I mean you need to take action on the thought. We need to address that anxious, obsessive, intrusive thought and stop it so that it doesn't lead to the anxiety, so that it doesn't lead to these compulsive behaviors. So taking action is always about changing the thought. It's never about changing the behavior. Hope that's clear. If it's not, please feel free to ask me a question about it. But one way you can start changing that thought is to recognize some really common misconceptions that come up for people who have relationship OCD. Again, we can learn from this disorder and from the research that's been done on it. So here are some beliefs that go along with relationship OCD that aren't really accurate. a lot of people who have these obsessive thoughts believe that relationships don't really evolve over time. And what I mean by that is that they think that the passion should stay at like 100% the entire time, right? We have in the beginning stages of a relationship, there's this passion, there's this fire, there's this connection, right? And it feels so good. And then over time, as you start to live with somebody and make a life with somebody, some of that damps down, right? You can't keep that level of passion 100% 24 hours a day for your whole marriage, right? It's not really a realistic perspective. And yet it's a belief that a lot of people actually do hold, and they might not hold it consciously, but it's like an underlying belief. It's maybe even a subconscious belief. It's like a feeling that there should be this high level of passion, and if there isn't, well, then maybe he's not the right one, right? And this is where a lot of cheating really stems from, is that when you are seeking this high level of passion all the time and you don't have it constantly in your relationship, but then you go and you meet somebody or you have a new coworker and you guys hit it off and there's that kind of chemistry and spark, you're like, oh, he must be the one or she must be the one I'm meant to be with, because this spark is there and I don't feel that all the time in my marriage, right? It's this kind of underlying belief that again comes from our social conditioning, from social media, from movies, from books, from what we learned from our parents. This idea that their true love is all about this passion that should just be there naturally. But if you look at it objectively, this is not a realistic belief, right? There's another one that, this one makes me laugh, but I think, again, like these are kind of funny when you just say them out loud, but if you look inside yourself, you might find that you've really internalized some of these beliefs, even though at face value, they sound kind of ridiculous. So this is a good one. There's this belief that a lot of us have that once you find the one, you can't be attracted to anyone else. Think about that. So if my husband is the one, that means I'm never going to look at another man and be attracted to him again. I'm never going to feel that little spark, that little turn on in my stomach. Hey, come on, you guys. We are humans. We are animals. We have evolved to have sex and to reproduce and to put our genes out there. The idea that you are going to find one person, fall in love with them, and then never be physically attracted to another human for the rest of your life, come on. We know this is a ridiculous expectation, and yet it's a standard that we hold ourselves to. Again, like not always consciously, you're not thinking, oh, well, I shouldn't be attracted to somebody else because I love my husband. But like we kind of believe that that's true. And so then when we do feel that spark of attraction for someone else, we think it means that we shouldn't be with the person we're with. Like, well, this is a sign, right? This is, if it was true love, I wouldn't feel attraction for somebody else, right? This is not, and brains are so good also at rationalizing this stuff, right? It'll give you this whole like good story. Well, you know, if he's really the one you're meant to be with, then of course you wouldn't be attracted to that. And the sign that you are, well, that just means that like maybe you haven't found the one yet and you've got to keep looking for your soulmate. And maybe this guy you're attracted to is the soulmate, right? You can get into this like whole spiral of this. But if you look at the underlying belief, the idea that you find the one and you'll never be attracted to anyone else again, if you look at that at face value, it's ridiculous, right? So questioning these underlying beliefs, looking for them and questioning them can be so powerful. And all of these underlying beliefs really lead to this idea that there's a one. There's a perfect one we're meant to be with. And this is what I want to just sit with for a moment, guys. Some people aren't going to love this, but I think it's important for all of us to consider, like, there's not a one. Like, imagine the pressure it takes off of you, any relationship you have now or in the future, if there's not a one. What if there are lots of ones? What if you could have a meaningful, powerful, loving, beautiful relationship with a lot of people? And there are over 7 billion of us on this planet. If there is one, just one perfect one, oh, the pressure, right? Like to find that person, the right moment at the right time, to make that connection, to be your best self in that moment so that they recognize that you're also the one. Like, oh my, no wonder we struggle in love. No wonder it is painful to be married or in a relationship. No wonder we question. It's all because of this fairy tale fantasy that there is one magic person, one soulmate, one that we're meant to be with. It puts so much pressure, it creates so much anxiety and distress in relationships and when you're looking for relationships. So I want to encourage you, if you struggle with obsessive thoughts, with anxiety about your relationship, to really take a little time and look inwards. Do you have any of these underlying beliefs about there being a soulmate, about there being the right one? And if you do, don't be hard on yourself about it. Just because I'm saying some of these beliefs are ridiculous doesn't mean you're ridiculous. Of course you have these beliefs. You have them because you have been taught them, right? You have learned them over a lifetime in this society. Of course they're there. But they're really worth examining, and they're really worth looking at objectively. Like, is this a realistic belief? Is this a belief I want to hold? Is this helping me create the love, the connection, the harmony, the beautiful relationship that I want to have? And if it's not, then maybe it's time to start letting go of some of those beliefs and thinking about relationships in an entirely different way. So guys, I want to recap just a little bit because we've talked about a lot of things today. So we're talking about relationship OCD and what it is. So relationship obsessive compulsive disorder is a diagnosable disorder. But honestly, it really doesn't matter if you have relationship OCD or not. The only question that's really worth asking yourself about this is my relationship anxiety or my intrusive thoughts, my obsessive thoughts about my relationship or myself or my partner interfering with my life? Are they making me unhappy? Are they making it harder for me to connect and create the marriage, create the relationship that I want to have? If the answer is yes, then it's time to do something about that anxiety, and it's time to do something about those thoughts. And some of those thoughts that you might have, some of the common ones, are the fear that you're not good enough for your partner, the fear that maybe you don't really love them, right? Second guessing whether or not you love that person. Getting caught up in the idea that there's a one, right? The perfect one, that there's a soulmate out there you're supposed to find. And when you get caught up in these thoughts, you'll find yourself looking for evidence of perfect love, of true love, and finding evidence against it, right? If you're attracted to somebody who's not your partner, well, that's a sign that maybe your partner's not your soulmate. Right? You'll be looking for all these signs that this relationship you're in, that this person you're with is not the one, is not your soulmate, right? You get caught up in this, or you'll get caught up obsessively looking at yourself and finding all the reasons that they're going to think you're not the one and not good enough and not the soulmate. So remember, if you notice this in yourself, if you notice some of these thought patterns, if you notice that you're obsessively analyzing the details of your relationship, researching relationships, or comparing yourself and your relationship to other people, this doesn't mean you have relationship OCD, and you should not worry about that or let that become another source of anxiety for you. All it means is that you have some anxious and intrusive thoughts that are affecting your ability to be happy in your relationship. That's all. It's okay, and it's actually really, really normal. If you consider what we're taught about relationships, what we're taught about marriage, how it's supposed to be. If you get on Netflix for 5 minutes and look under romantic comedies or dramas, you will see so much evidence, right, of where these thoughts come from. They don't mean anything about you. You're not wrong. You're not a bad person. You're not crazy. You just have internalized some of these messages that are coming at you all of the time from all over social media, television, movies, books, right? Of course you've internalized some of these beliefs. It's not a problem. There's nothing wrong with you. And the cool thing is that there are ways for you to change those thoughts and to start feeling better. And that is what I'm going to talk about a lot in these Facebook Lives and in my posts on this channel and on YouTube. So if you want to start to understand not only what your obsessive thoughts are, what your anxious thoughts are in the relationship, but to really change them, please pay attention to my posts, because I will be putting a lot of tools, a lot of tricks, a lot of techniques, and a lot of answers up there for you. So for those of you who are watching on YouTube, please don't forget to click that subscribe button and click the little bell to turn on notifications, and you'll see all of my videos that way and can really start to get a handle on these anxious, intrusive, and obsessive thoughts. for now, to start, the first step is always to find out what yours are. So that's where you should start today, is just start looking. What are those thoughts? What is going through your head? Do you have any of these really common fears, common anxieties, common beliefs? How do they play out in your life? Do they stem from some kind of underlying belief, conscious or subconscious, that there's a perfect person for you out there, that there's the right one, right? Start exploring and get curious about your own brain and find out what's in there. And remember, don't be hard on yourself about this stuff, because it's not your fault that it's in there. This has been put in your brain for your whole life. So of course these thoughts are there. Let's just get curious and find out which ones you're attached to. Which ones are you holding on to? Okay, guys, I hope this was helpful. I hope you are feeling less anxious about whether or not you have relationship OCD, because it really doesn't matter. Just start getting curious about your anxious thoughts in your relationship. Thanks for joining me, guys. I hope you have a beautiful day, and I will see you later.